Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Modern Moms Roadmap to Balance podcast. I am your guest, Kayla Nettleton. I am not your guest, I'm actually your host. But today, my guest is Kristin Salvia. She is an integrative nutrition health coach who specializes in epigenetic hair analysis. Using 4 strands of hair, she gets a comprehensive report on your health, including details on your nutrient status, influences from pathogens and environmental exposures, body systems most in need of support, and a breakdown of immune and gut status. She works with clients in person and remotely, and she provides personalized protocols with lifestyle, diet, and supplement recommendations. She has a special interest in the impact of the nervous system on emotional and physical health, as she believes this is an often overlooked area to support. Most of Kristin's clients are women, but she also works with men and children as well. Thank you, Kristin, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yes, and it's so funny because right before we hit the recording, we were both talking about how you haven't been on a lot of interviews and you are often nervous. And then here I go, make some mistakes. And you know what? It's okay.
Hey, you're putting me right at ease.
There's when like podcasts, I know like from my own perspective, when I would hear like guests on podcasts, it's you have like, or I at least sometimes I would put them on pedestals unintentionally because like, oh my gosh, these people are getting interviewed. They really know what they're doing. And yes, we do know what we're doing in terms of our work, but we're still human. We still make mistakes.
For
And
sure.
making mistakes doesn't make you less of a person. And so if you're listening today and you just needed to hear that message, take it
Yes.
with you, write it down, save it for later. Mistakes happen, but it doesn't make you less of a person or less, it doesn't make you like less knowledgeable of the information that you're giving and speaking on.
I love that. I think so often we only focus on the progress that we're making, but I feel like the
Mm-hmm.
mistakes that we make are so important too. They teach us where we've been and where we're going and how to do things differently. So, hey, I say embrace the
Absolutely.
mess, embrace the mistakes.
Yes, yes. And honestly, we're always going to make mistakes at some point. There's always going to be some kind of challenge that we are like that's put in front of us, but it's how we get through that. Like earlier in my, recording time or in just being the person who goes on onto podcasts or is interviewed, I probably would have gotten really nervous right after that. And I'm intentionally going to keep that in this
I love that.
recording because I think it's something that we just all need to like embrace. It's okay to make mistakes. It's really about, have you learned to like move past them and not let them impact the rest of whatever it is that you're trying to do.
Oh my gosh, I think it's so funny that you bring that up because even this last week, a big theme for me has been like removing the filter from myself and
Mm,
allowing myself to be more authentic, even if that means, people won't like it or it will offend someone.
yeah.
Like, stop trying to fit into these small places that you've
Mhm.
created for yourself. So, yeah, no,
Really
it's kind of ironic that you said that because that's something I've definitely been working on. Just let it be what it is.
good. Yes. So, Kristen, with the question I ask everyone, what is your definition of a balanced life?
So for me, balance is so tricky because it can be something that we work so hard to attain. And for some people, it's just going to look different for everyone. So for me, I look at more
Mm,
of, hey, it's a flow state, right? It's waves, it's ups and downs. And
mm,
sometimes we're doing really great and sometimes we're not, but it's how do we come back from those low moments and come
yeah.
back to a state of regulation, if you will, or
Mm,
whatever that might look like for you, not really dwelling on, hey, shoot, I took 2 steps back and now I've got to,
mhm.
double
Yeah.
down to make up ground. It's more of like, the analogy of you can't get right to the top of the mountain by taking one big leap. You take a lot of small steps, and sometimes you're taking step
Yeah.
backwards as well. And that's okay. I
Mhm.
mean, for so many people, like just look at yourself a year ago. Like you've probably done so much work in the past year to get to where you are right now. We just do not
Truly.
give ourselves enough grace. So for me, really like feeling imbalance means how is my nervous system feeling? How am I adapting?
Mm,
How am I able to come back to regulation after being dysregulated? And even too,
yeah.
it doesn't have to be 50-50, right? It can be 80-20, 70-30. It's going to look different for
Yeah.
everyone. Live your life, have your goals, but also life happens. So for me, in a
Mhm.
nutshell, that's what it is.
Yes, no, and just hearing you talk about that and then a little bit of what we were talking about before we hit the record button, what I've seen is what often puts people off balance is when they believe they are going backwards or they're not making the progress they want to make. So instead of slowing down and looking at the bigger picture, they see this this I'm going to say tiny, one small thing, but I'm making a point to say that because oftentimes we think they're really big things in the moment because we're not allowing ourselves to see the bigger picture, but we're looking at this one small aspect and then putting all of our energy into that thing so that we can make that progress that we're trying to make. But then everything else on the other side, whether that's family, whether that's our health, mental health, all other things kind of get put on the back burner. And that's what I've seen leads people into burnout because they're not allowing themselves to look at what their needs actually are as a whole.
That's huge. I feel like having that perspective of, okay, what do I need as a human to succeed so that I
Hmm.
can help the people in my life, my family? I mean,
Yeah.
oftentimes I love journaling for that reason, just to get it out on paper and to be
Mm.
able to look back at where I've been, kind of what you were talking about,
Yeah.
like having that proper
Yes.
perspective and not having that zoomed in view of this moment in
Hmm.
reality, when being able to look back over time and say, oh, actually, like I'm doing really well.
Yes, yes. And I feel like people always naysay about journaling, but it really is powerful. For one, it helps get stuff out of your head so that it's not taking up a lot of like brain power and space. And then two, it's a way that you can actually see and have evidence for the progress that you're actually making.
100%. I feel like for so many years, I would have the issue of, powering through my day, getting to bedtime, and then all of a sudden
Mm,
I can't sleep because all of a sudden my brain is trying to work out all the problems for my day or
yes.
my life. And,
Yes.
instead, trying to do like a journal or a brain dump is what I like to call it, like just dumping all that out
Hmm.
on paper. It gives your
Yeah.
brain permission to just rest. And even telling myself
Yeah.
too, this is not for right now. I can think about this tomorrow. Right now, my job
Yeah.
is to
You
sleep. I
can.
tell my kids that too. Like, right now, my job is to sleep. Tomorrow will take care of itself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's so funny because earlier this week, we're on Monday. So last week,
It is a Monday.
I was having a really hard time sleeping because my brain was just like really on. And I was telling my husband this. And I was also telling him it wasn't a negative thing. I wasn't worried about anything. I just had this idea in my head and I wasn't going to be able to sleep until I got it out. So I just
Mm,
took out my phone and I know, everyone talks about the blue light thing, but sometimes you can't get up and actually journal. For us, we
right.
have our 2-year-old co-sleeps with us, so I can't get up or else he'll wake up. So I grabbed my
Exactly.
phone. I just got everything out. And sure, I was awake pretty late. But if I didn't get that out, I probably would have never gone to sleep. I would have just kept
No,
thinking about it, thinking about it. And so sometimes it's about just letting yourself do what needs to be done so that you can allow yourself to rest.
exactly. And sometimes you are in that just survival mode, right? But little things that you
Yeah.
can build into your life to just take the pressure off of
Mm,
yourself, like journaling or getting support however you need to, make a huge difference in the long
yeah.
run.
Yes, they really do. And I was excited looking over your application because you really like to talk about the nervous system. And I also believe that it's something that is really overlooked. And
Mhm.
I'm pausing because it's having a moment right now, at
It
least
is.
from my perspective. I'm always hesitant to say things like that because I know with the algorithm, it can lead me to believe that it's having a moment, but then other people are like, "What? The nervous system? What are you talking about?"
True. Yeah.
And so I'm always very aware that the information that I'm getting and being pushed by algorithms isn't always what other people are getting pushed.
Right. It's
So
true.
even though I'm seeing a lot of this, in the internet space, that doesn't necessarily mean so is everybody else. So can you talk a little bit about how you came to recognize and realize that the nervous system is so important? What
Mhm.
led you to see that?
Yeah, I think like so many of us, we get into fields of work or practice for ourselves
Mm.
first. For me, learning nervous system regulation is not something that happened until quite recently. And I say that probably
Mm.
3 or 4 years ago when COVID hit. For
Okay.
most of us, I think
Okay.
we all
Okay.
had like a
Yeah.
come to Jesus moment of like, what am I doing? What is happening?
Oh yeah. For real.
Because, my whole life I was never truly taught to feel emotion or voice it or take up
Mm.
space. And so I stuffed and I stuffed and I stuffed and I repressed. And in so many people I work with, I see this pattern. They're not able to really feel their feelings. And so as
Mm.
they repress, they start to get physical symptoms. I'm not saying that every illness is caused from nervous system dysregulation. In my case, I feel that most of it probably was,
Mm.
as a child, I went through a few divorces and remarriages and moving and
Mm.
lots of different things that most people wouldn't see as trauma, but to me it was an emotional trauma over and over and over again. It's not
Mm.
something that was evident on the outside, and it's not something I was really given permission to learn how to deal with. So, I went on to go to college and have children and just pushed through,
Mhm.
and I think I was just constantly living in fight or flight. And it
Oh
wasn't
yeah.
until my third child was born that really started to become evident. I have always had an anxious tendencies as a kid, teenager,
Mm.
adult, but it did not really come to a head till after my third child was born and I started having full-blown panic attacks. And it made
Okay.
no
Wow.
sense because the triggers didn't apparently come from any one thing. I would just become
Yeah.
overwhelmed. I would start shaking, nausea,
Mm.
just all the typical reactions. And I'm like,
Yeah.
why is this happening? I am safe. I am fine. But when you
Mm.
look deeper, you see, okay, I have made these patterns throughout my whole life of feeling unsafe.
Yeah.
And my subconscious just cannot relax. And I wasn't
Yeah.
doing anything to care for myself. I was literally in
Mm.
survival mode with babies and toddlers. I had 3 kids in 4 years and I was not
Wow.
prepared. So that led me to really start looking inward and saying, okay, what am I doing to care for
Mm.
myself? And that's what kind
Yeah.
of pushed me into this world of holistic health, of
Mm.
really looking at nervous system regulation and how it affects our physical health. In Chinese medicine, they say that emotions
Mhm.
are stored in your organs. The liver, for
Yeah.
instance, houses anger, the lungs house grief. So
Mm.
it's interesting. Some people will see patterns of, call it woo woo if you want to. I'm fascinated by it. I just think that, all of these emotions we hold, they hold vibrations and
Mhm.
they're stored in the body. And if they're not allowed to be released, I mean, I could talk about this all day. I'm so passionate about it because people are trying all these different health fads. They're
Mm.
following all these
Yeah.
different accounts. They're taking all the supplements. Why isn't it working? They're not
Mm.
addressing
Mhm.
what started it in the first
Yeah.
place. So for a lot of people I work with, when they start to do that emotional work, they start to see change in their physical health and they
Mm.
start to finally move the needle. So for so many people,
Yeah.
that's where it started. I'm not saying it was everyone's issues, but for me, that's really what drove me to pursue this wellness
Mm.
lifestyle. And again, I'm not
Yeah.
perfect in it. I have my issues. I still have anxiety, but at least now I feel prepared to deal with it and work through it and come back to regulation. That was a long tangent.
Mhm. No, it was not a tangent. It was I thought it was very relevant. Yes, and it's so funny that it's that people refer to it as woo woo and
Mhm.
but these concepts have been around for before Western medicine came into play.
For sure.
And I don't think people really stop and think about that. I mean, even in the so I'm Hispanic. So even in the Hispanic culture, there were basically like medicine women and
Mhm.
who, like practice certain um I'm not going to try and say the word because I'm going to butcher it. But these just different cultural practices that have been passed down for generations and generations. This didn't come up out of
Mm.
nowhere.
Oh, I have
All
goosebumps.
of
I love it
these
so much. Yeah.
all of these Eastern practices have a source, right? And instead of pushing them away, how much is it really going to hurt you to just give yourself a chance to experience it instead of putting a man-made toxin, or I don't want to say toxin, that's like, I'm not trying to be negative. Because modern medicine has saved millions of
Oh my
lives.
gosh,
But
yes.
so I'm not trying to knock like science or anything like that, but
When it's the
and
first place
but
you go to as a Band-Aid,
yes,
I feel like
absolutely.
for some
Yes.
people. Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
So why not try something that is more natural and holistic before putting something that you might not even need into your body? Because you are absolutely right in terms of a lot of these symptoms are really because of our emotional health or lack of.
How many people though are dismissed when they, again, not to knock
Mm.
physicians. I have physicians in my family, nurses in my family. Thank God for modern medicine. But how many
Yes,
times are
yes.
people dismissed when they ask these questions and doctors
Mm-hmm.
just brush it off as that's not a thing. That is not connected. No, take this pill
Yeah.
or have this surgery and let's remove something. Again, that has its time and place. But when that's the first thing we go to without
Mm-hmm.
even being curious about what else is
Yeah.
out there, that's where there's a problem, I feel like.
Yes. No, absolutely. Yes. And it's when really started looking into this new age, right? It's so funny, new age, but it's not new. I think that's so weird. I've always wondered, like, why do they
And
call it
that
new
that
age?
that saying has such a negative connotation in some
Yeah.
circles. Like the way I grew up, if you said that word, you were like the devil. Like, do not do that, you know?
Yes.
Oh, it's
Yes.
so funny. But it's so much more
Yes. It
nuanced than the labels we've
it
created.
really is.
Yeah.
It really is. But I know like that's the like if you're going to a bookstore,
Mhm.
that's the
Yeah.
section that's talking about all the woo things and all of the like manifestation and all of those types of topics and laws of the universe and all of that.
Yes.
But it's titled New Age, but these
Hmm.
are not new concepts. These are things that have been around for, like I said, before modern medicine arrived.
You're so
Um,
right.
so what have you seen in terms of the impact emotional health has on
Hmm.
our physical health
Hmm.
in the
Well,
work that you do?
so the work that I do is based in epigenetics, which is the
Mm,
study of how genes are turned on and turned off. We're basically looking at what in your environment is causing your genes to act in a certain way. We know that our genetics are not 100% our destiny. In some cases, yes, they are. But in most cases, there are other factors playing into why you're manifesting disease in a certain way. And
yeah.
the hair scan that I do is actually based on frequency medicine. So, kind of along the
Okay.
lines of what we were just talking about, energy and frequency. So, it's
Mm,
taking the information stored in your hair and comparing it to other frequencies and pulling up a report showing you what is going on in your body right now. And for so many people, one of the categories that pulls is emotions. And, we're
mm,
confused by that. We're like, what are you talking about? Emotions. Why would that be impacting my physical health? I've got headaches or
yeah.
I've got stomach aches. Why would emotions have anything to do with that? But
Mm,
I completely feel it is 100% tied, physical to spiritual to emotion. All those things are connected.
mm,
I I do not believe in pulling out one symptom and trying to cure that one symptom without looking at the body as a
yeah.
whole. So when I see,
Mhm.
for instance, emotions flag on the hair scan, that will look like we literally have a section called system supports, and it's all the different body systems, but it's going to pull at least the top 4 for you that are most stressed and needing
Mm.
support. So when emotions flags on that, sometimes I'm like, oh crap, we're going to have a conversation. It's not so
Yeah.
simple as eat more protein. So
Yeah.
we're talking about, okay, when hard times come, how are you processing what you're feeling? How are you, moving that out of your body? Because if you're, again, like we said before, it's going to get stored somewhere, right? Now,
Oh, yeah,
there
it
is a
is.
component with blood sugar and other issues when we talk about emotions, because for sure, if you're riding a blood sugar wave all day up and down, your
Yeah.
emotions are going to be affected.
Oh,
But
yeah.
the thing I really do hone in on is, okay, let's look at some practical ways for you. What does that look like for you? What works for me
Mm,
may not be so good for you. So maybe we talk about, like we mentioned, journaling. Some people that's great
yeah.
for. Other people don't love it. I bring in tapping from emotional freedom technique. So
Mhm.
tapping is when you're
Yes.
tapping on different energetic points of the body, and you're basically saying affirmations as you do it, and you
Mm,
are rewiring your brain. Again, some people think it's woo-woo. I use it as a practice almost daily. I use it with my kids. It's fascinating. So if you look up EFT tapping online, you can even see some free videos
mhm.
to try. And you can do it on anything:
Yes.
anxiety, sleep issues, emotional
Mhm.
issues. But other ways that we address that is even like, how are you nurturing yourself throughout the day? Do you even give yourself 5 minutes to do something just for you? Like if
Yeah.
you're going for a walk, are you also texting? Are you also listening to a podcast? Those
Mm,
things are not bad. But if your brain never has a chance to sit and process, how are you going to move through that?
yeah.
So I always
Mhm.
recommend clients, hey, if you're going to go for a walk after lunch, that's awesome. Can you do it without your phone? Can you, just be you? Can you take in the
Yeah.
sights, the senses, and really just
Mhm.
be with yourself and let your thoughts start to go? And just be with your thoughts, not
Mhm.
judging, just let them be what they
Yeah.
are. So again, like I think emotions are so important, but it's hard to talk about. People they don't want to go there most of the time.
Oh, yeah. Yes,
Um,
yes.
but for the people that are willing, I do see a
Mhm.
big change. And I do my own hair scans every 3 months, and emotions do pop up from time to time,
Mm,
but it's always fascinating because the 3 months prior have usually been a very stressful time that I did not
okay.
really optimize my emotional health. So
Mm,
it's fascinating, the energy component behind why these topics show up on the hair scan. It's not just emotions. It can be you're not optimizing your protein intake. You're not using it
mm,
properly to rebuild your body, or your adrenals are stressed. What can we do to support that? It can look like
mm,
a lot of different combinations for different people. But
yeah.
again, like nervous system regulation is probably always going to be one of the things that I talk about.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And we do need to talk more about it because there is generations of us
Mm-hmm.
that were taught to push down our feelings, to
Mm-hmm.
get over it, to
Yep.
you're fine, get up and, go back to doing what you were doing. And we never learn to sit with anything difficult because
Mm-hmm.
for so long we were just pushing them down, and
Mm-hmm.
pushing them down
Mm-hmm.
until they just come out in like the worst possible scenarios
Mm-hmm.
because we are no longer able to push them down because they're
Oh
going to come
yeah.
out
Oh, yeah. I
in
think
some
we've all
way.
experienced a relationship with someone who is very calm and even keeled 90% of the time. And then one thing happens that makes no sense and they just explode like a volcano. I mean, I think that's what
Oh,
we're
yeah.
getting at here, right? Like you can only hold it in for so
Yes.
long and then it
Yes.
affects everyone
Yes.
around you.
Yeah. No, and it's so funny that you just said like that specific example because I feel like this comes up in like TV shows or movies, and it's that one person who
Hmm.
seems like they have everything together, and all of a sudden, like it's the last straw, and they
Yeah.
just explode, and
Yeah.
everyone's like, "What is going on?
Right.
What is going on with her? This is not like her."
Yes.
And it's because they are, and I'm saying her because it usually really is a woman
Well,
that
yeah,
is
and it's
portrayed
usually
in these
me. Like half the
things.
time it's me. Like I can apply this to myself too as a mom, right? You have those,
Yeah.
like you've heard of the term mom rage. It's a real thing. And yeah, maybe it's from sleep deprivation, maybe it's from overstimulation, but in those instances, like what are we doing to put up boundaries for ourselves to
Mhm.
notice before it happens? That was a huge difficulty for me for so many years
Mm,
with toddlers and little kids, just
yeah.
seeing it before it hit that peak moment, removing myself from the situation in a safe
Mm,
way,
yeah.
regulating, and then coming back. That's also part of emotional regulation, right? Taking
It really
ownership
is.
and seeing
Hmm.
yourself in a true light and saying, I'm about to lose it. How can I care for myself right now? It's not the
Yeah.
easiest thing to do. It feels better to scream. Trust me.
Yeah. And it's okay. Like if you're doing it in a safe place and
Mm-hmm.
you're not like scaring your children, it's okay to go and like yell in your pillow, whatever
Yes.
you have to do, because that's what releasing those emotions can look like sometimes.
Yes.
I
Oh,
once had someone tell me that they had gotten mad and they went to go like they had, I think a deck. There we go. And they were like, I went and destroyed the deck. And they also caveated that they meant like they were planning on doing that because it was already unsafe and they needed
yes.
to replace the deck. And they were like, but I know that's not a really healthy way to release the anger that I had. And I had to stop them. I'm like, that is an absolutely healthy way to
Mm-hmm.
release your anger.
Moving it through.
That
Yes.
yeah, that's okay. Maybe you're not going to have the deck all the time, so we might have to think of other ways that's going to help you feel like that same release or
Right.
similar.
Yeah.
But I don't want that. I don't want people to put themselves down because they had to go and, go to a kickboxing class or go to the
Mm-hmm.
gym and do the punching bag or chop wood or, demolition something.
Yeah.
It's
I
okay
mean, you're
as
talking
long
about
as
mom guilt right now, right? Nobody
yeah,
talks about
yeah.
dad guilt, but they talk about mom guilt because it's
Mhm.
a real thing. And I once had a therapist tell me that something that just blew my mind, and you've probably already heard this before, but it was you only have to be a good mom 30% of the time. If the other 70%, you're coming back to your kids, you're coming back in regulation, you're showing them what emotional health
Mm,
looks like, and you're repairing the relationship. So you can literally
yeah.
just be doing your bare minimum for 70% and they're going to be okay. When she told me
Yeah.
that, if you could see the weight that fell
Mm,
off my shoulder because I had been shaming myself so
mm,
hard up until that point. And so now, even
yeah.
now, my kids are 13, 12, and 9, all girls. But even now, when I have those moments of mom guilt or shame, I say, no, I am doing a damn good job. Like
Mm,
I am showing them what a healthy emotional adult looks like. Sometimes that looks like I get mad, and sometimes that looks like I'm
yeah.
losing my temper, but I'm coming back and I'm repairing it and I'm making it okay. And what an
Yeah.
example is that? I never had that example.
Mhm.
But I'm giving them that gift now so that in the future, hopefully, they can also do the same.
Yeah. Yes, yes. And I was just having a conversation with my mom actually earlier in the weekend, and she was like, I am just realizing the way that that I learned to parent wasn't the greatest way. And she even
Mm,
mentioned like I was from the generation that used because I said so,
yes.
when now I realize that that's not helpful at all because
Yeah,
it doesn't teach y'all anything.
exactly.
And in my mind, I was like, thank you. That
Mhm.
is very
That is
validating.
so
But at the same time,
validating.
it is hard to be able to think of, okay, why am I asking my child to do this?
Mhm.
Because sometimes because I said so is so much easier,
Yeah, yeah. And
right?
sometimes it
But
might need
most
to be that for sure. If that's your go-to statement, then yeah, let's evaluate.
yeah,
Sometimes
yeah.
you just need them to obey, let's be honest. But for the most part, allowing them the freedom to ask questions and have their own personal thinking abilities, what a
Hmm.
gift. I feel like I was never given that. It was just kind of like you said, do as I say and don't ask
Yeah.
questions. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So what led you to finding the hair analysis? Was
Mhm.
it something that you tried yourself first, or how did you stumble upon this?
Yeah. So in 2020, when COVID hit and everything shut down, I kind of just was reevaluating what I wanted to do and moving forward. My youngest was in kindergarten finally, and I felt like I
Mm,
finally had that freedom. But my kids were all home with me, so I couldn't do it then. I had time to though plan.
yeah.
So once things kind of started moving again, I enrolled in to get my health coaching certification because health has
Okay.
always been something I've been interested in. You know, I was a photographer
Mm,
in a past life, but then I had kids and then I just did the stay-at-home mom thing, which for me, I wanted to do. But at this point, I was like, I'm ready to like, really, I feel like I want to give back. How can I give back and add
mm,
value to the world that I live in? While my kids are at school, I'm not really, doing a lot of fulfilling things. It's COVID. So I was able to do their online program. I loved it so
okay.
much. But in the process, of becoming a health coach, I'm like, I feel like I'm doing all the right
Mm,
things with my health, but I am not seeing that needle move. My nervous
mm,
system was shot. I was tired all the time. The afternoon crash would hit. My body composition wasn't where I wanted it to be. It's all the things,
mm,
right? And I didn't
yeah.
know what is the reason that I feel this way? What's holding
Mm,
me back? So I was on Instagram following, all the people we follow, and I saw someone posting about their experience getting a hair scan. And I was like, that is it. For me, you didn't have to convince me. The minute I heard about the technology, I was so excited about it. I was like, that's what I need. And the beauty of
yeah.
it is that you do get kind of this amazing report. It's all about
Mm,
you. It's individualized to what is going on with your body. You get to see nutritional indicators where you might be lacking. You get to see if there's a pathogen in play. So
mm,
we'll see effects of virus, fungus, parasite, mold
wow.
exposure, bacteria overgrowth. And then we get to see, okay, what's in your environment? Is there a chemical or heavy metal exposure?
Mm,
So all of that to say, when I saw that this technology was available, I wanted a hair scan so badly. At the time, they did not have a remote option. You had to be
okay.
somewhere where someone offered it in person.
Mm,
So I kind of was just waiting around and being patient. I was like, I'm not going to, there was one in Dallas at the time. I'm in Austin, Texas. There was one in Dallas, but that's a 3.5 hour drive for me. So I ended up reaching out to someone that I followed that offered it and just said basically like, if you offer it ever remotely, I want to be on your list. And then the thought
mm,
occurred to me, well, I'm going to be doing health coaching anyway. What can I do to get trained in this technology as well? So can I do it for myself, but could I also offer it to clients? So long
yeah.
story short, they eventually made the remote option a thing. I was able to get a hair scan through
Mm,
this practitioner in Arizona. She's the one who ended
wow.
up breaking it down for me, showing me what was it. And I had a lot of issues. I mean, I thought I was so healthy. My report came back with
Mm,
parasite, candida,
wow.
all these nutritional deficiencies. And she's like, no wonder you're tired. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. But anyway, long story short, she ended up training me in the software and in how to read the report
Mm,
as I was finishing up my coaching certification. So it's something I was able to integrate
okay.
into my practice. And for
Wow. Right
me,
away.
I love data. I love individualized
Mm,
ways of showing people what their body is asking for because it's not me. It's not me talking. It's me
yeah.
explaining this information to
Mm,
you. And then you get to be empowered and take it into your own hands to decide, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to,
yeah.
eat more protein in the morning because of it. I'm going to possibly do a parasite cleanse down the road. I'm going to
Mm,
look into my emotional health. And that's where you start. It breaks it down very simply so that we can have easy, sustainable steps moving forward.
yeah.
And then even more exciting, you have the option to rescan down the road and hold your two reports up side by side and say, this is where I was. Here's where I
Okay.
am
Yeah.
now. This is what went well. This is what maybe I kind of slacked on. And so I'm going to focus on that now. So I always
Mm,
say this is a great technology for someone who maybe doesn't know where to start. Maybe
okay.
they've tried all the supplements, tried all the detoxes, they follow everyone
Mm,
on Instagram, but they don't know where to start. Maybe they don't have access to a great functional medicine provider that could dig deeper for them.
okay.
Maybe they don't have the funds, right? It gets expensive running test after test
Mm,
after test. If you could have a report that gave you 35 pages of information and showed you
oh,
what
wow. That's a
areas to
lot.
start with. Doesn't that feel
Yeah.
like a simpler way? And then you do your deep dives. So for some people,
Hmm.
that's how we do it. We give them the report. They see the areas that they need to focus on, and they say, okay, gut health, that's something I need to work on. So I give them some steps to start with, but then they're able to take it to their doctor and say, hey, could you run some deeper testing in this area or in hormones, for instance? That's how I got started. That's why I love using it now. And every time I see a new report come through, it feels like Christmas morning because it's a new puzzle to put together. And most people just get really excited that all this information is at their fingertips.
Yes, that's awesome. It gives people more access, or it sounds like it gives people more access to empowering information for them to take charge of their health.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a fascinating technology. I feel like, if you were to take this to a traditional doctor, they would probably blow it off and say, that's crazy. But if I could tell you how many people truly do resonate with their results, it's almost creepy. Like, how does this work so well? The stuff that comes through, it's incredible. Like, I'll see their intake forms and then I'll see their report and I'm like, whoa, it's the same. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah. Wow. So you were talking a little bit about like having to order lots and lots of tests to, get similar information. So
Right.
because I know people can wrap their minds around like getting a blood test. And so is it similar? Because I know
That's a
that
good
like
question.
scanning hair follicles isn't new. I mean,
Right.
people will scan hair follicles for drug tests
Yes.
because some things will come up in a hair follicle scan for a drug test versus a blood test. So is it
You're
something
100% spot on
similar?
with that. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a great question because now we can certainly use this in conjunction with blood work that you've had done recently to kind of pinpoint some issues like, why does your blood lab say that? Why are your B levels low? Why are your hormones off? So with the hair scan, we're not going to see specific levels. That is the one drawback. We're not going to see your estrogen is high and your progesterone is low. We're just going to see you're having some hormone issues. We will see some nutrient indicators such as iodine or other levels that could potentially point to thyroid health. There are some things that will show up and I'll say, hey, have you had thyroid labs done recently? Like some of these seem like it could be a thyroid issue, or hey, these seem more of a hormonal nature. So that's where I do like blood labs. But the thing with blood, it's the sample you're getting. It's what was going on in that period of time when you had the sample drawn. And it's really more of a 24 to 48 hour look at what's going on in your body as a whole. Whereas with the hair follicle, as you mentioned, we get a lot of different information that can be stored in the hair over time. So we're looking at the past 3 months when we look at your hair. We're not just looking at the past 2 days. So we're seeing all the information that's stored in that root ball. There's another test that some people offer called a hair tissue mineral analysis. This is not that. So with that test, you have to cut your hair, you have to cut several different chunks, and you're really just looking at minerals and a few other factors. With the hair scan, again, we're seeing vitamins, minerals, amino acids, fatty acids. We're seeing, again, those pathogens that can come up. We're even seeing influences from electromagnetic frequencies that we have with our devices, like our cell phones, our laptops. Some people are super sensitive to EMFs, and I know this could be considered woo-woo, but it's an energy, right? It's a frequency that our bodies are having to deal with and to kind of get out. Sometimes it can get kind of like stored and affect our cells. Some people will see headaches, sleep issues with that. So again, it's going to give you a lot more varied information than your typical blood labs will. And most traditional doctors are only going to run the bare minimum for you. If you know anything about that world, you really have to push to get some labs done.
Yeah.
So again, like if you had a hair scan and it showed hormones, all these different things, I could say to you, hey, let's work for 3 months together, because when I do a hair scan with someone, they get 3 months of support from me. So I have different packages and I can, send you my website. I actually just launched a website this weekend finally, so I need to send you that information.
That's awesome. Yes.
But yeah, so we can look at all those things and I can say, hey, it might be worth going to your doctor and asking for these specific
Mm,
levels just to get a better picture. And that way you have a baseline to look at, like, is what we're doing working? Is this really helping? But I like to
yeah.
focus on food and lifestyle first. If there are
Mm,
supplements you might need, we fill in the gaps there. Some people really could benefit from like a fungal cleanse or a parasite cleanse because
mm,
those pathogens are normal in the body until they become abnormally
mm.
overgrown. And then the
Yeah.
body's going to
Yeah.
stop what it's doing to clear that out. And it's going to steal
Mm,
a lot of energy. So some people really do. They see better skin, better energy, better
mm.
sleep, simply from kind of regulating the levels of those things in their bodies.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is awesome. It's amazing. And thank you so much for sharing this. I know lots of people are trying to look to others to basically match whatever it is that they're doing,
Yeah.
but everyone is different. And that's
Yes.
what I love about this is it can give you what you need to better
Yes.
optimize your health versus following someone else because they're so different than you.
Yes.
Their
And
environment
one,
is different than you.
yes. And one thing I didn't mention was we also get a list of 10 foods for you that are not a good fit right now. You know,
Oh.
I just posted about this over the weekend. I got so frustrated because someone sent me a post that said, don't
Mm,
eat oats, don't drink milk. These foods are inflammatory. They're causing your health issues. And I'm like, that is such a blanket statement. First of all,
mm,
foods do not have moral value. Different people react to
yeah.
different foods in
Mhm.
different ways for different reasons. And so we look at it as, hey, when we see these
Mm,
foods on the hair scan, we're not demonizing these foods. We're saying they're not a good fit for you right now. Let's take a break for about 3 months and then let's try to
mm,
reintroduce them. We will even see certain foods that are affecting your immune health and your gut health as well. So
mm,
it's kind of cool. Some people will see, hey, okay, gluten's really kind of dampening my immune system right now. So let's take a break.
yeah.
Or for the gut, for some reason, cow's milk is giving me some trouble. And
Mm,
often it's things that people intuitively were already wondering about that gave them issues.
mm,
So another big part of
mhm,
this is coming back to like trusting your gut, trusting that you've
mm,
got the knowing
yes.
already. And sometimes we do just need someone to
Mhm.
mirror that back to us.
Yes, absolutely. And that's really great that you said that because I had an experience myself where
Mhm.
I had been drinking cow's milk in my protein shake that I would drink in the morning. And I was telling my husband, I was like, this is not sitting well with me because I didn't
Mhm.
used to drink it with cow's milk. I would just drink it with water.
Yeah.
And I had switched to the cow's milk because the milk that we buy had more protein. And I was like, this isn't sitting well with me. I'm feeling really heavy. But it's
Mhm.
because I trust I've been practicing paying attention to my body and the way it
Yeah.
feels and how things affect it. But if I hadn't already been engaging in that, I might not have been able to tell that it was that. And so I ended up switching to a plant-based milk that had a little
Mhm.
bit of protein added,
Mhm.
and it made a huge difference.
That's
So, yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
I can
No,
see
you
how
know,
that would
there
help.
are these factions on Instagram if you follow any holistic practitioners. Some people are all about raw dairy. Some people are all about almond milk.
Mm,
Some people say that,
yeah.
we're not baby cows. We should never drink milk. It's again, like you said, everybody is different.
Yeah,
Every gut is different. And it's not a
yeah.
lifetime sentence in most cases, unless it's a true allergy. So for most people, you just need a
Mm,
break. And honestly, too, going back to like the emotions and the stress piece, I've seen a lot of people under times of stress, the body will look at foods that they eat on a regular basis as
mm,
problematic. And so, again, taking back to the energetics of it, sometimes it just means taking that out for a little bit, giving your body a break, and then bringing it
mm,
back in and see how you feel.
yeah. And so thank you again, Kristen, for joining us. And if someone is listening, they're like, I really want to try that. I really want to work with Kristen. What is the best way for them to get in touch with you and
Awesome.
connected with you?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on Instagram. That's where I do the majority of my chitter chatter about all this stuff.
Okay.
It's Holistic Wellness ATX. I'm here in Austin. And then
Mm,
also, I just launched my website finally over the weekend where I can have all my information in one place with all my links to booking or
mm.
ordering kits. And that's just holisticwellnessatx.com.
Awesome. And thank you again for joining us today.
Of course, thank you so much for having me.